What's up, friends and family of YouTube, or people just stopping by? I wanted to just laying here in bed, and I thought I'd do a little short video. I got to thinking about some things, and throughout the week I get text messages and people talking about all kinds of crap that's going on in the world today, and I listen to it on multiple scales. I mean, it's like, you know, I'm a pretty laid back pastor, but I'm strict about certain things and, stickler on things. But I'm a human, right? And I got to thinking about some things. So I heard some people talking in conversation about some things, and one person asked me what my viewpoint was. And I said, "You sure you want me to answer that?" They said, "Well, what do you think about all these people who are milking the system?" I said, "Well, what do you mean?" All these women having, two, three, four, seven, 10 children and driving and, brand new cars and not working and, you know, sucking all the money up and getting thousands and thousands of dollars. And I got to thinking about it. I said, okay. I said, well, let me ask you this question. I guess there's a couple of different ways we can look at it. You can look at it that way, or let's look at it from a different perspective. Let's say a woman has 7 children and she's been on the system and, well, I don't know, I guess you call it milking the system for years. Okay? Now, let's say 3 of those children decide to go in the military. Okay? Because they want to serve their country. For whatever reason, they want to serve their country. Could be because they want to go off to college and get an education and pursue a higher education. Okay? And do their part to give back to society. They become business owners, may go work a corporate job, or maybe they become somebody who works in the trade fields and helps build houses, or maybe they're fixing up bridges, whatever the case may be. So they decide to go in the military. Okay, maybe they just serve 20 or 30 years in the military. They serve our country. Okay. Now, even though they come from a family that, aka, milked the system, that lady provided our country with 3, 1, 2, 3 soldiers, and they sacrificed their time of doing whatever they could do to serve our country, defend our country, or go to war. And even though they're being educated, with that education, hopefully along the way, they learn what it means to give back to society. Maybe they become educators. Maybe they become preachers. Maybe they become police officers, firemen. And this guy was just staring at me. He goes, I never thought of it from that perspective. He goes, what made you think of that? I said, because I served with people like that in the military. They come from a poverty-stricken home, and then the only assistance they got was from the government because a woman grew up undereducated herself, and she got with the wrong men, and the men wasn't there for the people that I served with. They bailed. They dipped, right? And left her hanging. She didn't have a whole lot of money, but she had a lot of heart. And she had a lot of love. So the government provided. We provided, the American people. And to give back her children, she gave up 3 of her children, right? Now, whether it was by her choice or their choice or whatever, they served the government. And as a matter of fact, one of them was my first sergeant. And when I got to really know my first sergeant, he shared this information with me personally. This is many, many years ago. We're talking, God, it'd have to be, see, how old's my son? 34. It'd have to be over 30 years ago. And he shared this story with me. And it just kind of hit home hearing all of this stuff coming up right now. And it's like, I wonder how many families out there have that happen. How many women have had children and the guy that they had children with dipped because he lacked self-discipline, a good moral compass. Or maybe he came from that type of family himself and thought it was the right thing to do. You know? Or maybe he's just undereducated. You know, it isn't always about somebody being a gangster or being a useless member of society. Some people are just not educated. They're not taught because the people who were educating them or teaching them was never taught. So the curriculum, right, and the moral understanding was never presented to them. So this is a real thing that happens. Now, do I think it's right for people who do understand the difference between milk in the system and just trying to deliberately screw the system and not caring about giving back in any way, shape, or form? Yeah, there is a difference. But I'm not saying that shoe fits everybody. You know, you're not going to try, you know, you can't say a size 5 shoe fits everybody because it doesn't. We all know that. So you can't really categorize everybody that has multiple children in that same category. You know, you can't say they all fall into the same place because that's not always true. I think sometimes the media, you know, and the internet, sometimes they push these narratives and they try to fill your mind with all of this bullshit and gossip and misinformation because you can't say that for everybody. Are there people? Sure there is. Just like there's probably, half decent politicians, and there's absolutely rotten and corrupt, and all they're doing is filling their pockets. Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter who they are. Look, I guess you really have to understand politics to see how it is. Some people say, it's just these guys trying to fill all the rich man's pockets, blah, 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 blah. I said, look, man, I think you got to understand the overall picture. It doesn't matter who's there. That's why I've always said, myself, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm a very independent person. And when I make a decision, I try to choose the person of the lesser of evils, right? And closer to what I believe as an individual and how I live my life. That's pretty much it. I voted for both Democrats and Republicans. Sometimes it was good and sometimes it was, not so good. So, I mean, you just don't know what you're going to get. So, but when it comes to, people receiving benefits, I think it's, you know, all different. And I don't think that we should honestly categorize everybody as being that way, because that's not the truth. Even if they have lots of children and they're a single parent, whether they're a single mom, whether they're a single dad, and they're raising these children, and they're getting all kinds of money or benefits from the government, and it may be thousands of dollars. But if you got 7 kids, that's a lot of food. That's a lot of clothes. That's a lot of medical expenses. That's a bigger house that you need to take care of them. That's a bigger, vehicle to take care of them. That's a full-time job. Now, do I think they're all responsible? Probably not. I'd be a fool to think so. But they all can't be bad. And I think sometimes we often fall, and I have too in the past, we fall into this entrapment of what gossip leads us to believe, right? But I think as I get older and I know more about people and I educate myself more about people, I find it not to be that much, right? I think that every circumstance is different. And I think that we need to stop thinking that way as a nation. Maybe not everybody agrees. I rightfully don't give a rat's ass if people agree with me or not. I really don't care. I know. I served my country in 2 different wars. I gave blood, broken bones, messed my whole self up. For what? Because I love my country. And all the generations from the very first war in this nation, before it became a nation, my family has served. Multiple people. And I think that we're all different in our thinking. But we all did the same thing. We all served. We all individuals. And believe me, I know that some of you won't agree with what I have to say, and that's fine. We can still be friends. You can agree to disagree. I'm just trying to bring up a point that sometimes people try to draw you in to believing something and you agreeing with them and thinking that they're going to draw you in to be a yes boy when you haven't even had the chance to stop and think about the whole thing and research it, I mean, nothing is greater. There's no greater education than you being there, you seeing it, you interacting with people every day in your community, in other communities, and actually caring about them. It's the same thing with Christians or Muslims or any faith for that matter, right? They may profess that with their lips, but do they profess that with their actions? I don't expect them to be perfect. God gave me free will. As far as I'm concerned, that's pretty much between you and your creator, not me. I'm not here to judge you. But something that we should do as humans is stop worrying so much about, stupidity. It's like the whole Snap thing. That's just, I find it stupid. I find it stupid. They could have all went in there and just did a separate bill. But no, they both didn't. Not just the Democrats, not just the Republicans. They both didn't. But I do see that President Trump is trying to do something to get SNAP benefits out there. And I think the leading factor of all that is a lot of veterans, probably over a million veterans that receive SNAP benefits. And I think that's a key factor in all of this, believe it or not. Because, veterans, why do we go to combat? Why do we serve our nation? We serve our people. That's what we do. And what type of people are we if we serve our people and then we turn around and say, oh no, we're not going to feed you. We're not going to clothe you. What the hell kind of, that's immoral, right? It's an oxymoron. I don't get it. Doesn't make sense to me. It's stupid. If you're going to fight about something and you're going to argue about something and you want to have an unmoral disposition on a subject, right? Make it a good one. That's what I say. Make it a good one. Make it a good fight. Make it worth something actually worth fighting over and fighting for. That makes sense. But the stuff that they're bringing up today, and the repetitiveness, I hear repetitiveness out of both sides, both parties, right? Over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's like they're trying to brain train you, right? I mean, it's absolutely... It's so sad that I laugh about it, because I cannot believe how many people that I listen to or call me or text me about things and ask me my point of view. I say, look, I don't think you really want to know, because you might not like what I have to say. Or you may wonder why I have to say it that way. And here it is in a nutshell. If somebody asks me my opinion, I'll tell you my opinion. And it's not riding the fence. Some people say, oh, well, that's riding the fence. No, I'm not riding the fence. I'm just thinking from an ethical point of view. Right? And everybody's entitled to do that. We all are taxpayers, right? And we're humans. We should have our viewpoints. I just think that more people need to be educated on their party's beliefs. People say, oh, we're American people. We're a democracy. No, we're not a democracy. We're not. We're not a democracy. We're a republic, right? So I think people misunderstand that, right? Now, we might fight for democracy principles, right? Have a more democratic thought process when we're trying to get along with other people or make decisions. But we're not a democracy. I think people need to understand that. We're trying to brainwash people into believing that crap. It's so stupid. It really is. And I think a lot of the schools and colleges today, they teach people stupidity because they don't even know themselves. It's sad. It really is. I had a chat with a guy one day, and he was a college professor. And I didn't find him to be very intelligent. He was trying to put the intelligent hat on, right? And I told him at the end of the conversation, I said, man, don't take this wrong, but you ain't got a lick of common sense. You know that, right? And he just was bewildered, right? He just stared at me weird, like I don't know if he didn't understand what I was saying or he was shocked that I brought that up to him. I told him, I said, your thinking wouldn't last, 5 seconds on the streets. I said, you'd be so scared you'd piss your pants running. these people would smoke you. I said, man, you can't be thinking about, just in a general conversation about some stupidity that he was talking about, right? Trying to pull me in to think I agree with him. I didn't agree with him. Quite frankly, I thought he was an asshat. I said, I hope you're not teaching people that in college. I said, because your moral compass is way off, brother. I said, you really need to come back to earth. I said, I don't know if you're doing this for because you're being paid to think this way and follow a specific agenda. I said, but, any normal person wouldn't think that way. I said, you're going to get yourself in trouble thinking that way. And he really didn't fight me on the subject. He didn't fight me on it because I left him with enough information that it made him think about it. I said, I don't want you to believe me. I don't want you to agree with me. I just want you to think about and process the information that I'm giving you. That's all. Just try to process it. You don't have to agree with it. Just process it. And that way you have another tool in your toolbox when you're trying to make a decision in a general conversation, or maybe in life in general, and how you want to approach certain things in life. That's all. And, he shook my hand and he left. And I think when he left, he was thinking, But I'm not afraid to voice my opinion. I'm not afraid to tell people how I feel. And I tell everybody, even when they come to me for counseling, I say, look, you asked me for my advice. I'm going to give you my advice. You can either agree with my advice or you can disagree with it. I've had people who, I pastored, and they got pissed off at me because they didn't like my answer. Because it was tough love answer. And they said, well, we don't want you to pastor us no more. I said, that's fine. You don't have to. I said, you don't pay me. I don't do this for money. I said, maybe you should go find a pastor that's going to rub your back and comb your hair and brush your teeth for you and wipe your ass. I said, but I'm not that type of pastor. I'll love you. I'll think, keep your best interest in mind when you're having a discussion with me. But, you have to learn to do these things on your own. That's just the way it is. And some people, you give them all the tools that they need to try to fix themselves, and they still don't fix themselves. They still don't change. Well, it's no different than the government. It's no different, whether it's the U.S. government or your local politicians in your state. It's the other people that you don't see and you don't hear, who have money, who push these agendas into the politics. That's where it gets icy and dicey. And I'm just telling you the truth. You can believe it, or you don't have to believe it. But I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you from what I've seen in all my years on this earth. And having friends that are politicians, both Republican and Democrat. Some people you can approach and you can have a general conversation with, and they'll ask you your opinion. And I always tell them, look, don't ask me my opinion on a subject if you don't want the truth of how I feel. And I don't want you to get pissed off at me because you're asking me. You're asking me, so I am going to answer the question how I feel. So if you don't want to hear my true feeling, and you're not going to let it sink in, you're not going to absorb it, and try to see reason in why I think that way, then don't ask me the question. And with that being said, some of them say, okay, yeah, maybe I better not. Why? Because they don't want to hear it. Because they know right off the bat, I already know who they are. I already know their thinking process. It's just going to piss them off. So it is what it is. But anyway, this is a long video, and I know some people are saying, I just freaking rambling on. Well, I am, probably, but I just wanted to do another video and address a few things and tell you guys how I think. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, but think about it. That's all. Think about it. Before agreeing with people who don't have as much of a vast understanding of people as I do, I have a vast understanding of people from all walks of life. From the guy who lives under the bridge in a tent in those stinky clothes because he don't have any money and he lives there for his own reasons, and maybe he's happy or maybe she's happy. We think they're not, but they're there maybe because that's the life they chose. Some people maybe they're because it wasn't the life they chose. Who knows what brought them there, right? But they still need to be loved. They still need to be understood. They still need a friend, right? And then you have the rich people, the billionaires, millionaires, right? It passed to those type of people too. But I don't treat them any differently in how I voice my opinion on subjects. I, I just say it the way I say it. And I tell them, I say, this is what I think. This is how I feel. But I want you to go out there in the world and research it. And agree and follow what best suits you. What best makes you feel comfortable. Just remember, you're always going to have opposing factors against you, right? People who don't agree with you, right? And with that, you have to understand how to balance yourself out, right? Find balance in it all. The problem is some people, they don't want to reason. They don't have that reasoning mindset. And with them, it's awful difficult. That takes time, years, and patience to understand them and to work with them. And when they trust you, and when you gain their trust, they might not agree with all of your thought processes, right? But once you gain their trust, that is when they really start to think about what you're saying, no matter what the subject be. Whether it's marital counseling, children's counseling, health and finance counseling, you know, lots of different subjects. You know, when you're a pastor, you wear many hats. Many hats. You got to be the brother, mother, father, sister, cousin, best friend. I mean, you have to be all those things, and it's very difficult sometimes. That's why I keep telling Mama, I said, man, I'm almost ready to retire because it just keeps getting tougher and tougher all the time. And I think it's mostly tough when you don't see them changing, people changing. They just keep doing the same old thing. And whether it's from weakness, because they don't have the intestinal fortitude to really want to change their lives, or the people they hang around with, or they're just damn lazy. I don't know. I mean, each and every individual is different. But I see these things. I still love them. But sometimes, after a few times, you just got to let them go and let somebody else take on the job. Because you're at ends meet, and it's like, can't get anywhere, and you're hoping for the best for everybody. And what that best is always different for each and every individual. So maybe it's time for somebody else to pick up the pieces and try to put their lives back together for them if they can. And hopefully in the end, if things do come around, they can come back and say, "Hey, I appreciate at least you trying to help me." And I mean, that's enough for me. It really is. At least if they didn't agree with me and I tried and somebody else may have been able to help them, maybe something I said was in the back of their mind, but it just took somebody else to be able to explain it in a different way to help them out. Hey, you can plant the seed, but that doesn't mean you're the gardener watering, the plants. It's just the way it is. All right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it. And please don't be mad at me for just saying what I feel. I think you shouldn't be mad at the way anybody expresses themselves. It's just how you express yourself, right? Don't try to be controversial in an angry, mean way, because you're not going to get anywhere. You're bumping heads. You're just going to anger the other person or the other side, and things are going to escalate into something that maybe neither party really wanted to go there, right? So try to figure it out and, speak calmly with one another. There is a way. You just have to have patience. And if you don't have the patience, try not to get in confrontations with people. I mean, I know sometimes it's hard. I really do. Because sometimes I lose my cool. Just the way it is. But, try to anyway. I appreciate you all stopping by. I know I don't do these videos. I mean, it's just not the type of wheelhouse I like to be in. Not the type of ship that I like to run on my YouTube channel. But I just see so many things, and it's like, I want people to understand who come to my channel how I think and how I am. I do a lot of different videos on a lot of different things, right? I'm a well-rounded person, and I always try to give back to people. I'm not asking for money or anything like that. I don't do that. Sometimes I might have an auction or something, depending on the type of season, to try to earn a little money to give to people who, maybe they're homeless, or maybe they're down on their luck, or they have children and, it's a Christmas or maybe Easter or something, and try to give them a little something extra. Otherwise, I just do reviews on different things, or show people how to fix things, or, things of that sort. Maybe it'll help them. Maybe it's those little things that might spark interest in them, and maybe they'll go into a certain type of field. That's all. But I don't really like to talk about politics. But this is not really a political thing. It's more how I think that people should evaluate everything that's going on in our country today. They should evaluate it, take steps, hear different people's perspectives, right? Get those juices flowing in your brain so that when you make a decision, you're making a decision based on many different types of facts. And then you take those facts and you find clairvoyancy. Better yet, you get a clearer understanding, right, of what's going on. And then in the end, you feel better about the decisions that you make. Just stick by your guns, that's all. No matter what, after you've evaluated everything and you come to whatever decision it is, just stick by your guns. Don't change horses in the middle of the stream. That's what my grandfather used to say. Stick to your guns. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. And if you made it to the end, God bless you. I know you had to listen to me this whole time. I promise you I ain't going to be doing too many of these. And this is a long one, but I wanted to at least tell you how I felt. A few people were asking me, so I just figured I'd bring it up. All right, guys. Take care. God bless you all and your families. And if I don't talk to you personally on this kind of a level, I hope you all have a happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you all. God bless you. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care. God bless. This is Pastor Bob. And I'm out of here. See ya.